Happy Tuesday to you, Central Georgia. Thanks for tuning in here for a look at your extended forecast. Have a few more talking points as we go throughout the rest of the work week here in Central Georgia. And it does look like maybe a decent shot, fingers crossed, of some widespread rain that could result in some pretty significant rainfall totals in order to alleviate our dry conditions. We'll break down everything that you need to know. But first things first, let's talk some tropics. As of 11 a.m. this morning, just a couple of minutes ago, we got Tropical Storm Melissa. So we now have our first cone forecast for this new named storm down in the Caribbean Sea. This was Invest 98L that you heard us referring to very often. And right now, this cone is just a big cluster. You can see how it just widens out into a larger circle, indicating that there is a lot of uncertainty about the potential path that this storm will take. I put some timestamps over here, but these go all the way out until Sunday morning and still expected to meander somewhere down here in the Caribbean Sea. It's very hard to see as well, but you can see it maybe some flashes of white through the holes in this tropical storm icon. Melissa is forecast to become at least a Category 1 hurricane. Right now it has winds of 50 miles per hour, central pressure of 1,003 millibars, and it's moving to the west at a pretty good speed right now, 14 miles per hour. It will continue to slow its motion over the next couple of days, and it's expected to take a turn up to the north, maybe even eventually to the northeast. But once we get into the weekend, the path that Melissa does take is going to be very uncertain. So will it go out into the Atlantic Ocean? Will it go over towards Central America? Only time will tell as we start to fine-tune this forecast with Tropical Storm Melissa. But taking a look at your spaghetti plots, which also still have not updated as of right now, I can go ahead and tell you that there are many that are going dead west over to portions of Honduras and Nicaragua. There's some that have it moving more towards Jamaica, up into the eastern portion of Cuba. And there's plenty of good agreement that this storm will continue to curve up to the north and impact portions of Haiti and the Dominican Republic over Hispaniola and continue to move back out in the Atlantic Ocean. But the big point I want to hammer home is that right now we are not forecasting any impacts to the United States, but that's as of right now. We just told you that there's high uncertainty with this tropical storm about the path that it takes past this weekend, so it will remain something that we continue to keep a very close eye on. But as of right now, I think the main concerns are going to be down in the Caribbean, specifically Hispaniola and other areas like Cuba and Jamaica, which have already been outlined in tropical storm watches and even hurricane watches as of right now. But you can see that Melissa is currently located just to the north of Aruba. It is still a ways away from the United States, and it's not expected to really move too far over the course of maybe the next week in time. So we'll continue to monitor closely as we try to get a fine-tuning of that cone forecast. Like I said, right now it's just a big old circle indicating that there are a whole lot of possible scenarios. But we can cross Melissa off our 2025 Atlantic Basin hurricane names list. So that is going to be the 13th named storm that we've seen so far in the Atlantic hurricane season. To put this in perspective, about a week and a half ago was the anniversary of Hurricane Milton last year. So we had our M named storm about a week and a half ago in the calendar year. So we are definitely behind schedule of last year's hurricane season, and 13 named storms. That puts us one before the N name, which will be Nestor, and that is actually going to be the 14th named storm, which is what we typically see on average for a hurricane season. Half of the tropical storms that do normally form into hurricanes, and then just below half of those hurricanes do form into major hurricanes, Category 3 or higher status. This is what was forecasted for our hurricane season by Colorado State. 17 named storms, 9 hurricanes, and 4 of which are major hurricanes. Here's our numbers as of October 21st. 13 named tropical storms. So we're really close to that average of 14, but still a couple of named storms off what was forecasted. Four of which have formed into hurricanes. So less than a quarter of the named storm, or excuse me, less than a third of the named storms that have formed have strengthened into hurricane status. But probably the most staggering detail that you see, 3 out of those 4 hurricanes were major hurricane status, and still thankfully most of those remain fish storms, just stayed out in the Atlantic Ocean. But we haven't had too many storms develop into hurricane status, which is 74 plus mile per hour winds. As of right now, Melissa does look to add another number onto this and put our total up to 5. But tropical activity is continuing to decrease very rapidly as we head into the back half of November. You can see that we have this gradual peak right here in the red and in the yellow. That's just before October 20th, which was as of this past Monday. We definitely see a significant drop off in the frequency of named storms and hurricanes as we go into the month of November. But hurricane season doesn't officially end until we get to November 30th, and we still can have tropical activity in the month of November. It's not completely impossible. So we'll continue to keep you updated with everything that you need to know, see if we start to get some of those numbers a little bit closer to average and what was forecast. But as of right now, that's the latest on Tropical Storm Melissa down in the Caribbean. No need to fret anywhere in the United States as of right now, but if you have plans to travel into the Caribbean, that is a storm I would definitely watch very closely. Now taking a look at your headlines. A dry cold front going to pass through as we go into really tonight into the overnight hours, and we're still going to have our fair share of chilly mornings and great days for the foreseeable future. Your next significant rain chance will arrive on Sunday after we get through today. I have a very minuscule rain chance, but it's only going to be in the form of a few spotty sprinkles here and there. I think as we go into Sunday, we could very well finally have some widespread rain in the cards. But not so much as of right now. Here's a look around the quad. Nothing but blue sky. Downtown Dublin, downtown Macon, Warner Robins, and the Georgia National Fairgrounds down in Perry. Not even a single cloud that has been in sight. Your temperatures have been the main talking point so far throughout the morning hours. In fact, there's still a bit of a talking point. How about 55 still in Eastman? It looks like Eastman is just a little bit later to get that update right now. Almost all of central Georgia is hanging out in the mid to upper 60s right now. 69 at the warmest in downtown Dublin. To put this in perspective, we have seen this temperature increase 34 degrees already. Dublin got down to 35 degrees for that morning low temperature. So we've seen that increase almost to the 70-degree mark, and we're not going to stop there. There's nothing in the way of cloud cover slowing that warm up, or nothing in the way of rain along with that. So in the eastern United States, you can see that most of the southeast is rather cool. 66 in Macon matches the temperature over in Montgomery. 70 in Charleston, 77 in Jacksonville. As you go farther and farther down the Florida Peninsula, you can see it's a little bit warmer in areas like Orlando and of course getting down to Miami. But the warmest temperature that we see on these plots goes to Houston, Texas, sitting at 83 degrees. I do not miss being in the 80s already at this time of the day, as we were in the late summer months. So now finally really starting to transition into that fall-like forecast as we head into the last maybe 10 days of the month of October. Your dew point temperatures, we're actually seeing some light green down to the south and the southeast, something we haven't seen over the last 24 hours. But most of your dew points are still down into the 40s, indicating a very dry atmosphere, but not necessarily as dry as what we saw this morning, and there is a reason for that. Humidity levels, we are seeing more humid air down to the south and the southeast of us and over to the west of us. But this isn't super swampy air. This isn't a whole lot of moisture. This is just going to be plenty of light green. That means it's sufficient humidity to sprout at least a little bit of rain, but we'll talk about how that is going to play out over the next couple of days, specifically today ahead of our approaching frontal boundary. Nothing really in the way of winds or wind gusts, pretty calm winds that are present all over central Georgia, maybe a sustained wind up to 5 or 7 miles per hour like Dublin, Vidalia, Cochran, Macon, and all the way over to the west in Taylor County and Butler. So let's talk about some of the numbers that we did see yesterday. 39 was your recorded low in downtown Macon yesterday, well, specifically Middle Georgia Regional Airport, but 75 was the high temperature. That is a good degree difference between your morning low and your afternoon high temperature. That is a 36-degree increase throughout the day. 75, that was below average, and you definitely know 39 was well below average by 12 degrees of what we typically start out for this time of year. But we always put in perspective, and it always could be worse. Your record low yesterday was set back only 3 years ago of 29 degrees in 2022. Record high temperature yesterday, 91 degrees. We haven't been talking about 90s in quite some time. I don't foresee us having to talk about 90s unless we have a very substantial warm up in a really dry period, and that would not do much good in terms of our drought conditions and our abnormally dry conditions that we have present. 2.71 inches above where we should be at this point in the calendar year. That number will continue to steadily go down until we could maybe get some relief from that steady decrease day by day as we go into the end of the weekend. And we'll go ahead and mention your sunrise and sunset times. Sunrise yesterday morning, 7:43. Sunset was at 6:55 in the evening. So for today, your sunrise once again was at 7:43. It's a clear start to today. Nothing in the way of cloud cover whatsoever. But as we go into the evening hours, we'll start to see some clouds approach. I think you're really just going to notice the breezy conditions as opposed to the cloud cover. We are going to see some clouds courtesy of the frontal boundary, but overall it's going to be a pretty thin line of cloud cover. We'll just start to see an uptick in those southwesterly winds with the occasional gusts up to 15, maybe even upwards to about 16 or 17 miles per hour in the evening time frame. 82 for a high temperature before our front starts to move through, 5 degrees above average, and this is a pretty quick warm up, about 7 degrees of a warm up in between yesterday and today. Average high this time of year down to 77 degrees. The 70s are going to continue to be a lot more common. But your numbers already in the mid to upper 60s and not too far off the 70-degree mark. So most areas, I think by the time we roll into lunchtime, should start to see at least a 70 pop up. But we'll continue the warm up into the afternoon time frame. This graphic has us peaking at a high temperature of 81 degrees at 4 and 5 o'clock. I think we'll start to see some 82s throughout the rest of today. I went 1 degree above what the model said yesterday, and we hit the nail on the head right there at 75 degrees. So the models right now are saying 81 degrees. I've also elected to go 1 degree above that as well today. I do think a high temperature of 82 should be in store here in Macon. So if you do travel farther to the north throughout today, you will start to see some cloud cover in the north and northwestern portion of the state of Georgia. Back here at home, it is all crystal clear. And now taking a look at this frontal boundary as a whole, and you can see plenty of scattered shower clusters that are present back over into West Alabama, over into portions of the northern half of Mississippi. Don't think I quite see any lightning flashes, but that may be too far away to record anything in the way of lightning flashes. This is the same frontal boundary that will pass through central Georgia as we go into tonight. But that is a key word, tonight, because we are not really going to see much in the way of rain and really much in the way of cloud cover because of the general timing of this and the fact that we are a moisture-starved atmosphere. We'll see a brief rebound in humidity, but it's not necessarily going to be sufficient enough in order to sprout a continuous line of widespread rain like, say, Sunday's front did. So here's a look at 5 p.m. You can see that the front is still well off to the north of us, but we start to see at least some gustier winds ahead of this frontal boundary. It starts to move in as we go into the 9 p.m. hour. So 9 p.m., many of you are already done with your dinner plans, maybe winding down for the night. And right now it just looks like a line of clouds, nothing really in the way of rain. But you will see back over to the west, there are some light green shades right there. I wouldn't rule out the possibility of maybe a very brief sprinkle shower, but luckily many of you are already going to be fast asleep when these rain chances are going to be present. So more than likely, you're just going to walk out the door if you did get a brief sprinkle shower and just see a couple water droplets on your windshield. But this is at 2 a.m. That cloud cover continues to go down to the south and the southeast. By 8 a.m., we should eventually clear out. And then what happens behind the passage of a cold front this time of year? Cooler and drier air funnels in. And that drier air is already making its presence known behind the frontal boundary as we go into Wednesday afternoon, right there around evening commute time, still holding on to a bit of a steady breeze, and we'll continue that pattern into Thursday. Maybe a cloud or two that tries to pass over, but overall it will set up a dry stretch for the back half of the midweek, and that will take us all the way into the end of the work week on Friday. So for the next 3 days, I have that 10% chance of rain, and it's going to be for the nighttime hours tonight. More so overnight, I would say, but it's very likely that you don't see any rain whatsoever. But that high temperature of 82 degrees, that will get bumped down as we go into Wednesday. Wednesday actually going to start out very similar to how Monday has been. Well, I guess I shouldn't say start out, but the afternoon on Wednesday going to be very similar to what yesterday was. The only difference is sunny skies and a high temperature of 75 will be paired up with a bit of a steadier breeze than what we had present, say, on Monday afternoon. 49 for a morning low as opposed to 39, which we had today. That is a bit of an increase because the clouds are going to act as a bit of a stall. So as the temperatures try to cool down each and every night, you need some clear skies in order to allow for those numbers to continue to drop down. Obviously, we're going to have that thin line of cloud cover, but it is going to help maybe slow the cool down just a tad bit. And along with that, when you have winds present in the overnight hours, it can keep your temperatures a little bit warmer, say, than on a crystal clear night with nothing but a calm breeze that is present. So 49, a little bit warmer to start out tomorrow. We'll take what we can get because this morning was definitely mighty chilly. I walked outside in the middle of the morning show and I was able to see my breath as I did walk outside. So that is definitely too cold for the back half of October in my personal opinion. But then we'll return with these chilly mornings. 43 for a morning low on Thursday. Afternoon high temperature just a little bit warmer than Wednesday, but I still think Wednesday and Thursday afternoons are going to be absolutely amazing, feeling fall-like days. Here's a look at the future view humidity graphic, and I did tell you that we should see a rebound in some moisture content as we head into the nighttime hours tonight ahead of this frontal boundary. You can really get a good depiction of where the boundary itself actually is, because directly behind it is going to be your drier air, and that's going to be areas of no color whatsoever. So anything that we build into the forecast in the way of that light green color will push out down towards the south as we go throughout the rest of the morning tomorrow. Really more so tomorrow afternoon, we'll start to feel that drier air once again, and dry air stays present all the way through Thursday into very early Friday at 4 a.m. In terms of the breeze, I think that will steadily build in as we head throughout the afternoon time frame. Right there around evening commute time, maybe a gust up to 15 miles per hour. Obviously, your gustier winds will be found farther up to the north and the northeast up into upstate South Carolina. We'll hold on to a light breeze for the morning hours tomorrow. So remember what I said, when you have cloud cover and you have some winds present during the overnight hours into early morning, it can make your morning low temperatures just a tad bit warmer. But if we are to get down into the 40s, we could be pairing these winds up with what we call wind chill factors. So yes, we've been talking about heat indices, what seems like the past 5 months or so. But once you have some winds in the picture paired up with some cool temperatures, it can result in those temperatures feeling a little bit cooler than what they actually read. So we'll have to pay attention to that during the morning show tomorrow. And then as we go into tomorrow afternoon, still a bit of a breezy day. And this might be a factor in the aspect of we may have some fire danger statements issued, which I'll get to in just 1 second. But we'll go ahead and go all the way to Thursday, where it looks like it's a little bit breezier down to the south of us, a little bit breezier to the north of us. But here in central Georgia, not too much in the way of some gusty winds, just maybe a steady breeze, 5 to 10 miles per hour. And then with that takes us all the way into Friday morning, where it just looks like we have some scattered winds here and there, but nothing really in the way of a substantial breeze. So I did refer to those fire danger statements. These get issued typically when you've undergone a really dry stretch. So go ahead and put a check in that box because it's been very dry over almost the last 2 months here in central Georgia. Your relative humidity, anywhere from 19 to 23%, just means that you have a very dry atmosphere. So obviously your dew point temperatures aren't really close to your actual temperatures. It is going to be a very dry atmosphere after the passage of this frontal boundary. So go ahead and check that box as well. Dry vegetation, like I mentioned, obviously we're going to, or we've undergone a very dry stretch as of recently. So all the vegetation is very dry, but another factor that's not included on this is going to be some windy conditions. And that's just because if you have dry vegetation, you have a dry atmosphere, you don't have much in the way of moisture to combat, say, a fire of that dry brush. And if you have some gusty winds on occasion, that can blow these fires just out of containment for just a little bit. So that's what we're talking about with these fire danger statements. It typically looks like this, and we will provide you with an updated graphic. This is one from last year that I'm just using as an example. This is what they will look like. It kind of looks like all of our watches and warnings that we normally get, just with highlighted counties. And what it essentially means is controlled burning is definitely discouraged. So any fires that develop could spread rapidly, obviously with the windy conditions and prime fuel to the fire, quite literally with the dry vegetation. Outdoor burning is strongly discouraged unless you're following the proper protocol or the proper guidelines from the National Weather Service, the Forestry Commission. Just be sure that you're expressing caution because the National Weather Service has highlighted the potential for issuing at least one of these for Wednesday, but maybe even another as we go into Thursday. So morning low temperatures, a little bit warmer tomorrow morning as compared to today, but then your morning low temperatures not quite as cool as we go into Thursday, Friday, and on into Saturday. but that's still below average by about at least 5 degrees, somewhere down in the low 40s. And of course, you'll have your Dublins, you'll have your Eastmans, you'll have your downtown Macons that are probably maybe about 2 or 3 degrees cooler than the numbers I do have forecasted. Your afternoon high temperatures going to continue to be very pleasant. Today, definitely on the warmer side, but I think it's going to come as a treat for many of you, especially compared to the temperatures that you walked out the door to. Probably too cold for your liking. You packed your sweater, maybe even wore some sweatpants over your shorts like I did this morning. Well, 82, you're not going to need any of those layers whatsoever as you go into the afternoon, but it will be a lot more pleasant. Wednesday all the way through Saturday, high temperatures in the mid to upper 70s. Pretty close to average, maybe even a few degrees below average as we head into the weekend. And in fact, another temperature downtick is in store as we head into the end of the weekend and the beginning of next week. So now taking a look at your muggy meter, we do have a brief increase in your humidity values as we go throughout today, but then we'll get that reinforcing push of drier air through Wednesday, Thursday, and on into Friday and Saturday. So once we go into Sunday and Monday, we see a rebound in the moisture content once again, and that's going to result in some better rain chances on your long-range models. So now taking a look at the long-range models, we go all the way into Friday at 7 p.m. Very important time here in Central Georgia, very important time for most areas in the South because that's the time of most of your high school football kickoffs. Looks like a pretty clear atmosphere here, nothing in the way of rain, just going to be chilly out on the gridiron. So you're going to want to pack at least some form of a light jacket, maybe even wear some pants if you're planning on going out to all the Friday night lights that will be in store. I believe it's week 10 or week 11 of our Tailgate 13 show. And I know many high school teams are probably on the back half of their schedule, one of the last of 2 games, maybe even the last game of the regular season before you transition into the playoffs. Now let's go all the way to Saturday. It's a bye weekend for the Georgia Bulldogs, but that doesn't mean it's everyone's bye weekend. Maybe you're having some outdoor tailgate parties, whatever your weekend festivities do have in store for Saturday. Maybe going out to the pumpkin patch or a fall festival or a trunk or treat. It does look like 6 p.m. all the way on Friday or all the way on Saturday. A bit of a gloomier forecast, but cloud cover not going to necessarily be a bad thing. That could limit the warm up and keep your high temperatures just a little bit lower for Saturday afternoon into the evening. But then we see a good cluster of some rain moving in from the west and the southwest. When we start to see these yellow and pink and red shades, that means pretty good agreement on some stronger to maybe even severe weather. And that looks like it's right on our doorstep as we head into Sunday evening. But then we transition into the overnight hours. That's when it looks like that widespread rain could make its way into central Georgia. So that would definitely be a best case scenario. I do apologize for all the clearing of the throat. Got a frog in my throat right now. But as we go into the overnight hours, that's going to be a cooler portion of the day. So hopefully it's nothing in the way of severe weather, but we could use some widespread rain. So we'll kind of take whatever Mother Nature does bring us. But the rain chances, they do kind of look to hold off right now until the nighttime hours on Sunday, which would also be a good thing to getting in any of your outdoor plans for the tail end of the weekend. Church plans, maybe some NFL watch parties, or taking a vacation, heading back into town. Hopefully we can remain clear for most of the day on Sunday, and then those rain chances begin to pop up as you're winding down and getting ready for the new work week next week. So now we go all the way into Monday afternoon. Still looks like we could have some rain in the vicinity of us, but plenty of cloud cover regardless what falls in the way of rain. The thicker that cloud cover is, that's going to really limit our warm up as we go throughout the day. And if we have cloud cover present from sun up into sundown, obviously we're not getting many peaks of sunshine throughout the day. So that will result in a more substantial cool down with your afternoon high temperatures. Then as we go all the way to the end of this, Tuesday at 4 p.m., it does look like there's another frontal boundary on its way. Widespread rain according to the GFS and according to the Euro, but the timing is not agreeing whatsoever. So we'll worry about that after we worry about Sunday into Monday's rain chance, but maybe a bit of a dreary stretch for Sunday all the way into the midweek next week. Wouldn't necessarily be a bad scenario whatsoever. Hopefully we can get our numbers back up to close to average for the month of October and really alleviate any of those dry conditions that have begun to settle in. So a brief warm up into this afternoon. You're probably already starting to feel some of those warmer temperatures, but I think it is going to be a pleasant change of pace after dipping down into the 30s in a select few areas this morning. Downtown Macon, Wrightsville, Forsyth, and especially Eastman and Dublin, who got down to 37 and 35 degrees this morning. You're going to see a high temperature in the low 80s, maybe not quite that high. Maybe you're at 79 degrees. All in all, it's going to be a pleasantly warm afternoon, but you are going to feel the humidity just a little bit more than, say, you would have felt yesterday. Then we're back to the stretch of fall-like days, Wednesday, Thursday into Friday. High temperatures in the mid to upper 70s, morning lows that are going to be down into the chilly range. Once again, the low 40s. Tomorrow morning going to be a little bit warmer because of those winds and the cloud cover that passes through. And then we actually continue to see that temperature decline as we head day by day throughout the weekend. And I think that's mainly due to the fact that we have an increase in cloud cover that is limiting our warm up. But then 71 on Monday, it could be one of those scenarios like I was talking about, dense cloud cover from sun up all the way into sundown. And your rain chances not too impressive right now, but that's just because we're starting to see better agreement amongst the long range models as of this most previous run. Yesterday there was no agreement whatsoever. This morning there was no agreement whatsoever. So that's why your rain chances still remain low for Sunday into Monday. But if we are to continue to see the long range models spit out the same scenario and agree on widespread rain chances, we'll give these rain chances an uptick. But we were talking about that last week, and we're trying to nail down this past weekend's rain chances. It did take a lot of fluctuation in order for us to get a pretty good idea about the rain chances, and it was widespread, but the rainfall totals were still very light in nature, only a couple tenths of an inch of rain, maybe a select few areas that saw around an inch of rain. If we can get a widespread rainfall total, maybe up to 2 or 3 inches, you obviously don't want too much of that rain at one time when you do have a dry atmosphere, but we definitely could use some more significant rainfall totals to hydrate the soil, hydrate the ground, and get us out of the dry and drought conditions that have settled in. So that's where things stand as of right now. I hope you really enjoy this fall-like stretch. Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday, I cannot wait to spend some time outside. But as you get into the tail end of the weekend, your forecast is looking a bit messier, but we'll continue to fine-tune the specific details with that. And going back to the beginning of this, Tropical Storm Melissa did form as of the 11 a.m. hour right at the beginning of this stream. We're going to continue to gather graphics, get all the information that you need to know, but there's high uncertainty in the potential path of Melissa. But right now, all the possible scenarios that seem to want to play out do not look like they have any impacts to the United States. But we can't rule that out just yet. We'll continue to keep a close eye on it. Nothing you need to worry about right now. Let's just root for some rain at the end of the weekend. Thanks for tuning in. We'll see you here at 11 a.m. tomorrow.